Welcome to Bari Banter, where we talk everything bariatric surgery with the people that know it best, the patients. I'm Shannon, and I'm here with my co-hostess with the mostest,
Lita. So sit back, relax, and remember, sip, sip, sip.
Well, Lita, episode 5.
Episode cinco.
Is that actually a thing?
I don't know. I kind of practiced it throughout the week, and then I was like, cinque.
Please don't language auditors. So this week was our friendiversary. Can I just say, well done to you for putting up with me for 2 years.
I don't know how.
No, literally, I don't know how. Like, I honestly, do my own head in. So
2 laps around the sun with you as my... No, look, honestly, I wouldn't change anything that we've done, so...
What was, I thought about this the other day. What's your favourite memory from the last 2 years?
This is a really hard question to answer because obviously... We've done an awful lot of things in the last 2 years. But the one thing I think that comes to mind is Bari Island.
You're going to say Bari Try.
Yeah, the Bari Try. Because like you and Amy had both finished before me, and I came across the line, and I never actually wanted to try and get a place or anything. It was just purely I wanted to do it. I wanted to cross the start line, cross the finish line, and then... You and Amy were all celebrating because you came third in your age category and Amy came first in her age category, and I was like, heaven forbid, do I ask? And I was like, what did I come? I was like, do we know the results? Next minute I'm there like hugging my mum and dad, and you come up to me and you're like, Lita, guess what? And I was like, what? And you're like, you got third. And like just that moment to me, it was so...
It was so raw.
Oh, it was so raw.
Was so
and it was
raw.
Just... I had you, I had Steph, I had Amy, I had Mum, I had
family
Dad,
there,
like family, friends, all those people.
Special.
It was such a special moment.
Well, I won't even answer it because you just took my answer away from
me.
me. Yeah, literally.
In the whole 2 years that we've known each other, that was your moment. It was
so raw. Same as I think this weekend with Amy, seeing her come over the finish line and, the raw emotion.
That had me crying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty special. Speaking of friendiversaries, we'd be coming up to the 2-year friendiversary with our guest today too. What was Oswald 2 years ago?
Yeah, Oswald 2 years ago. We met her. She fell over a tram track.
Yeah. Classy meeting.
So this week's guest, taking the leap back in 2017, weighing in at 135 kilos, this woman has undergone the gastric sleeve. 3.5 years later, she's undergone another revision surgery where she had the gastric bypass. The best part of 4 years later, she's at 83 kilos, which is about 50 kilos lost. She's gained her life back. She's also gained a husband in the process. Welcome, Lauren Tory.
Hey, Lauren, how you doing?
Gained a husband.
I mean, you had him from the beginning, but you officially tied the knot. So
yeah,
I'm no longer Whittaker, now I'm Tory.
Yeah, I know. We did see that actually when I saw your name. I was like, oh, look at that. That's fancy.
The only thing I like about it is that now it's 4 letters instead of 8. So when you're filling in forms, it's a lot quicker.
There's enough boxes. There's enough boxes now, yeah. No, yeah, I know the feeling. I've got a pretty long day as well. So Lauren, we can jump straight into it. So Lauren, what was it that made you want to go down the line of having bariatric surgery at the very start?
At the very start, it's a horrible, horrible situation. I think it's most people's fear when they're overweight. I was traveling back and forth to Manila for work, and we went to this Korean restaurant, and there was literally everybody that was there in our office, and we sat at a chair and we were sat there talking, and the chair broke underneath me. So we're in the middle of a restaurant. I'm in a different country. I was surrounded by people that I managed every single day, and the chair broke.
Was it one of those plastic chairs?
Was it a plastic? I've had a plastic chair break underneath me as well.
It was, but imagine it was a restaurant plastic chair. So we're not talking like cheap Bunnings $5 special. We're talking like a chair. And let's face it, people that are from the Philippines tend to be of a smaller body shape and size. So yes, it probably wasn't made to be probably over 100 kilos. And then I drank copious amounts of alcohol to cope with the shame. Then I went back to my hotel room, and I remember ringing my sister saying to me, have you thought about weight loss surgery? And I was like, no, I'm not that big. I don't need weight loss surgery. And then that had planted the seed. So then I started to look up different surgeons, different options. And then one of my friends in November was like, I've booked in, I'm having my surgery just before Christmas. So I was like, screw this. So in October, I went and met the surgeon and pretty much left that meeting with a surgery date for the same.
Do you want to know a funny story? Because I've had a very similar with the chair breaking. I used to go and see a home hairdresser. Look, don't get me wrong, I get my hair done maybe once, sometimes twice a year, if that. And I went and I was like, you know what, I'm getting my surgery done in a week's time. And my hairdresser at the time was a mutual friend of a friend of mine who had the surgery. Anyway, we happened to be FaceTiming my friend who had the surgery, and I was sitting in my hairdresser's living room on one of those cheap green Bunnings chairs, and I got really excited and I turned around and next minute the chair is broken underneath me, and we've got it on video. I fall into the floor. Like, you know how stylish we are when we wear foils in our hair, like sitting in the middle of the kitchen floor talking about how excited I am to have surgery next week, and my bloody chair.
I could just imagine though, like, how's your week been? Where's Lita gone? Oh, there she is.
Like, it was just hysterical.
I had that once actually, but mine was, it got stuck to my butt. You know how it has the sides? Like,
Oh,
the sides
you like fell
wide
through
load.
I know, I stood up and it was stuck to me and I was like, well, this happened.
waddling around with 4 legs sticking out your butt.
Yeah, literally. It's kind of like a porter seat, you know, it just straps to you and then you take it wherever you go.
What was it that you were hoping to achieve? So your sister planted the seed into your brain to have weight loss surgery. You went, you had the initial appointment with the surgeon. What was your initial, like, what was it that you initially wanted to get out of surgery?
I hated myself so much. And I was at the point where every single thing was negative. So like, me and Simon would be getting ready to go out and straight away I would be like, I don't want to go, I've got nothing to wear. I look fat, I feel ugly. I don't know, we're going to go out and people are going to wonder why you're with me. Or why are you with me? And stuff like that. So it was just constant negative self-talk all the time. Every aspect of my life, from things like when I would meet people that would be coming into work for appointments, I would be like, am I going to lose the sale because they don't want to buy from someone that's fat? So it was more that negative self-talk had to change because I was also at the point where I was pushing Simon away because I was so negative about myself. I would almost be pushing him to leave before, so that it was me pushing him away rather than him leaving me. So rather than
you weren't the one getting hurt in the situation because that your self-worth was so low that you were like, it's only a matter of time.
But I kind of want to touch on that because for those who don't know, like the people that we're going to get on to Bari Banter, we send them out a form beforehand and we ask them a bunch of questions so that we kind of, know what to talk about. And one of our questions is, what's your proudest moment so far? And this one, which is going on from what you just said, your proudest moment is your current mindset and your self-talk and that you no longer detest yourself. So that, like I got goosebumps when I read that.
Yeah,
like,
I love that.
The fact that you used the word that you detested yourself, and I can relate because I openly say that I started falling into a hole where I was ashamed of myself. I wouldn't go as far as I detested myself, but I was definitely on that path. Like, for you to now turn around and say that that's where you're at now, like, that's massive credits to you.
I was even at the point where, obviously I'm from the north of England. I didn't want to go home because my worst fear was having to see my friends and my family and for them to see how much weight I'd gained and for them to feel ashamed of who I was or for me to have to justify how I'd gone from being fit and healthy to being so overweight. So even like it was judgment from other people as well that kind of like my fear of judgment, I think, rather than that. But
totally.
yeah,
I get that because with my ex-wife, that was one of the big things she hated is literally I would run away from people in supermarkets. If I saw someone I knew, no word of a lie, I would run. Yeah. Like I would not run, but like I would go the
Shan
opposite
and run
way.
Back then?
I would waddle very efficiently. So like that was one of the big things. She's like, I'm like, me being that way was affecting her because I would be like, no, we're going to go this way. But it was one of those things, it wasn't just in my head because a lot of the times when I did talk to someone that I knew from the past, that they would say like, oh, wow, you've been grazing in a good paddock, and stuff like that. And I hear that so often and it's like, you know, what makes someone say that? Because what's the response going to be? Yeah, I have.
Yeah, like KFC. What of it?
Yeah. No, exactly right. So with your self-worth and stuff, was there a point that you felt that? Was it when you moved away that you started going, you know, I'm starting to feel better about myself, starting to appreciate who I am a little bit more?
I feel like I've done a lot of work in the last 6 months in terms of what are the things. I've almost had this, like, it sounds so cheesy and corny, but I've almost had this like self-discovery of I've lived my life up to this point, making decisions that I thought would make other people proud of me. And I haven't made decisions that have made me proud of me. I've done everything to try and please others. And I think the last 6 months I've gone, do you know what? I don't like my job. This is not making me happy. I'm out of here. I don't like the fact that we've backed ourselves into a corner financially. So let's change it. You know, I've spent all this money and all this time and effort to try and help assist in losing weight, but I hadn't really changed some of my habits. So now I'm at a place where I'm eating well. When I choose to splurge, I'm choosing the things that I really enjoy, not just let's eat because I feel lonely or because I'm bored. Now I'm like, I'm going to eat that cheesecake and I'm going to enjoy it. And I'm not going to feel guilty about it because I know that every other meal for the rest of the week is going to be a balanced option.
Yeah. Well,
So you've almost gained control again.
Literally, like the card we have, literally, so we replace this card at the front every day, every time we do a podcast. And today it reads, what you do every day matters more than what you do once in a while. So it's kind of like if you're doing something repetitively and you're doing something that, you know, over and over again, eventually it's going to catch up with you. So like I'm a big fan of the habits. You know, I've worked really hard to implement habits that, you know, are going to get me where I want to be. Because at the end of the day, I got to where I was 175 kilos purely off the basis my habits got me there. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't what I did once off. I didn't eat a cheeseburger and gain 90 kilos. You know what I mean? I ate a bunch of cheeseburgers or a bunch of food and it got me to that weight. So it's the same thing. To undo it, you need to implement habits to get you out of the ditch. You know what I mean? Like you don't jump a ladder, you climb it one tread at a time. And I think that's really important.
What's the saying? Focus on each step, not the whole staircase? Is that?
Yeah, that is it. That is it. That's a really good one. So in the early stages, after having the sleeve, how did you find the early stages after the gastric sleeve? Did life change a lot for you?
Yes. It was weird. I remember feeling like it was like you'd eat 2 mouthfuls and you'd be so full and you'd be like, wow, I'm going to be so thin in no time. Like that side of things. I remember feeling like this is a totally life-changing moment, and then kind of getting sort of 6 months out and being able to go out for a meal and not feel like you'd barely touched it. But yeah, the sleeve was, I remember the sleeve being all about like mind games around portion. So what I could physically eat, was I on the right plate size? Have I had my protein? Have I prioritized? Like I remember it being a lot more, it was definitely on my mind a lot more when I was sleeved around what I was eating and the portion size that I was eating. But then as the time went on, yes, I was never back to what I was pre-sleeve, but I was definitely starting to expand the portions. And then almost feel guilty about the fact that I'm eating something that's bigger than that portion control plate.
So you obviously, for everybody knows that not everybody knows, but you've had the sleeve and you've also had the bypass. What was it? Did you have any complications at the very beginning of your sleeve surgery? Or was it sort of like later on that then made you decide to have the bypass? Or like talk us through the process it was between the sleeve to bypass.
So my bypass actually my sleeve went pretty well. And then in June 2019, that's where things started to fall off the wayside.
So that was almost like a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah, 18 months. Yeah. So the only real complication I had with I had to have my gallbladder removed in October. And that was October 2018. That's really the only issue I had. And I was really lucky in the fact, well, depending on how you look at it, but I was lucky in the fact that I'd eat a meal, then in the evening I'd be vomiting the meal up, but it would be hours and hours later and I'd be vomiting just like bile. One night I'd gone to bed, it was 9 o'clock because Nana. I'd gone to bed, I woke up and I was vomiting, but literally there was nothing there, it was just bile. And then I had so much pain, and it sounds hilarious, but I didn't know where the pain was coming from. I was kind of like, oh, where is the pain? And I literally dragged myself out. I rang the 1300 health number. They were like, you need to get to the hospital in the next hour. I got to the hospital at 1 a.m. By 1 p.m. the next day, I'd had my gallbladder removed. So I was lucky in the fact that I didn't have a huge build-up to like loads of ongoing gallbladder issues. I
didn't think it was reflux for a whole year, because that's what I thought.
Yeah, because I didn't have it for the whole year. I had it for maybe 3 or 4 weeks leading up to it. But I thought it was maybe because people talk about dumping, and I was like, well, maybe it's that. Like, obviously, it wasn't coming out of my asshole; it was coming out of my mouth. But yeah, part of me was thinking maybe it's a form of dumping.
Yeah.
And then I went in and they were like, yeah, you've got a really inflamed gallbladder. It needs to come out. And I was like, oh, okay.
With the gallbladder thing, I don't know if this is something I got warned about, whether I was in the, the earmuff stage of surgery where my surgeon told me it and I just didn't listen. But it is a big thing having your gallbladder out. Like the amount of people within the weight loss community, bariatric community that have had their gallbladder out, it's something that I feel like they warn you about it.
It's not inevitable. Like, not everybody. No. It is very high chances, but it's not inevitable. And from what I've been able to sort of pick up along the way is that, and for me particularly, I already had gallbladder issues. I already had the stones prior to me having weight loss surgery. It's just that I had so many other medical not issues, because I didn't really have that many comorbidities, but like I was overweight. I was already uncomfortable. I probably thought that I had reflux the whole time, but I never actually got it treated. The reflux wasn't actually reflux. It was me trying to pass gallstones. I also had polycystic ovaries. Like, there was so many other medical conditions that I had that it was just like, oh, that's another pain. You know what I mean? Like, so, and I think that's what people like, from what I've heard and from what I've heard from my surgeon is that a lot of people have them already, like have the gallstones, because it's a calcium buildup in your gallbladder. So they already have it there. It's just that there's so many other underlying medical issues that you don't actually realize.
You just fob it off.
Yeah. And then eventually once you end up losing all the weight, you're kind of like, oh, well, hang on, I'm fit and healthy now. I have these pains. Something's not right. And for me, that something not right was pretty much me being like, oh, I have reflux. And then I remember saying to you, Shannon, I was like, I don't want to go to the hospital because I don't want to be that person who goes to the hospital for reflux. But no, if I had gone to the hospital, I probably would have had my gallbladder taken out rather than having to pay for it.
So on that note, Lauren, from the start of the process to now, what has been your biggest hurdles that you've had to overcome?
Oh, definitely my mental health. So yeah, 100% without doubt, it has been my mental state. And I think this probably comes from, I've been on medication for depression since about 2016. Like I said earlier, with all my negative self-talk, I think I felt that when I lost weight, everything would just be fine and I'd be thin and I'd have no worries and everything would be great. And then I started to lose weight and I was getting to a point, like I think I was about 88 kilos. And all of a sudden it was like, actually now I no longer talk about myself like a piece of shit, but I'm still not happy. Happy seems like a really bizarre way to describe it. But something was still not right. I was still suffering from depression, and I would see people around me on Instagram who, had depression and lost the weight and were starting to regain their lives. And I had felt that for a short period of time. And then I realized, well, actually, I still have a lot of underlying issues, which probably have initially led to my weight gain, that are unresolved. And I've replaced my feelings of I'm depressed because I'm so overweight. If I lose the weight, I won't be depressed anymore. And then I lost the weight and things were starting to get better. And then kind of everything just came crashing down around me. So definitely my mental health, which then led to I think it was about 4.5 weeks stint in a mental health facility.
And you checked yourself into that mental health facility, didn't you?
Yeah, I think it was, definitely Simon was a huge factor in this. And not so much at the time, but afterwards we've kind of reflected on it and probably the month in the lead up, I'd disconnected. The lights were on and no one was there, if you like. But it's weird because a lot of people have said to me, we didn't know anything was wrong. But he would say to me, we'd have conversations and you couldn't get your words out. You couldn't speak. You couldn't remember the word you were looking for. And I almost remember it was like, I'd slowly just started to give up. I'd stopped going into work. I had stopped taking care of myself. I'd stopped showering. And oh God, please don't come at me for this. I'd even stopped feeding my dogs in the morning. I would only feed them their evening meal because it was just one other thing that I couldn't physically do. I couldn't get myself up. I couldn't get out of bed. Yeah, from there I started to spiral into thoughts of physically harming myself and ending my life.
Because at this point in time, like, you're a good friend of ours. We've said that before. We met you almost 2 years ago, and like, we were pretty heavily involved in your life at this stage. Like, I had no idea that you were at the point where you were ready to physically harm yourself. But I also give you massive props. Like, I have so much respect for you because you didn't tell any of us, but all of a sudden it was like, you were like, hey guys, this is my situation. But
hey, I'm in hospital.
You're like, hey guys, I'm in hospital. But like, it was 5 or 6 weeks before your wedding. So like, you were planning a wedding, you're about to get married to Simon, and you've gone, hang on, this is too much. I need to go to hospital. Like, I have massive props to you for that.
Was that the point in time, like 4 weeks out from your wedding, that it really came to a point? Or was it before that and you just kind of let it drag on?
I think it was, I changed jobs. So I went to I jumped up a step in my career in March. And by mid-June, I was drowning. And I think at that point, I had the wedding coming up. I wasn't happy at work. Simon wasn't happy at his work. I had the pressure of my family coming over for the wedding. You know, anyone that's organised a wedding will know, like, people, yeah, it's stressful, and people just get entitled about what they should and should not be allowed to do, and drama. But yeah, that's kind of where I was like, something's not right. And I guess one of the things that when I went in and I met with a psychiatrist, he said to me, do you feel like a piece of driftwood bobbing around and there's lots of stuff happening and you could go under at any point and no one would notice? And I was like, yeah, that's exactly how I felt. I was so low.
That totally breaks my heart, though, because we were friends with you and we would have noticed.
No, but
we wouldn't have, because you wouldn't have told us.
It's the same as like a week after my surgery. I went through the exact same thing. Your low point, your point where you just you don't see worth within yourself. So like, I totally get it. No one would have looked from the external and being like, he's at that point, you know what I mean? The same as they wouldn't look at you. You can mask it very well.
Everybody carries themselves to make them feel like they are okay, but we're really. But was a bypass in mind afterwards, or what was it that? Obviously, you've gone from sleeve to bypass. Do you think that it was your mental health issues, or do you think that it was the fact that you were letting old habits creep back in? Do you think it was stress? Like, what was it that you think that led to your regain? Before your wedding, you said to us that most people before their weddings have to bring their dress sizes in. You had to take your dress size out. And I'm sorry, that's probably a touchy subject for you, but like, obviously that was a driving factor for you wanting to have the bypass afterwards. Like,
believe it or not, that wasn't a point for me. So I bought my dress in the February of that year, and my dress fit, and I'd bought it so that I could take it down in size, so it could go 2 sizes smaller. So when I bought it, it was actually loose at the back. It was, I had to buy it bigger to get my boobs in. I love the way you like, I understand.
Yeah, you have boobs.
She said boobs.
When I was in the hospital, I went in at 88 kilos. I came out at 93. One of the huge
4 weeks.
Yeah. One of the huge factors there was that you didn't have to do anything. Like, every meal was, the only things that I guess were set in a mental health facility are your meal times and your activities. So you get up and you've got pre-breakfast, then you have breakfast, morning tea, lunch, afternoon tea, dinner, supper. So that's like, I'm counting on my fingers. That's 6 times a day. That was the only real thing that I had. And I would get to the point where I was hoarding food. So when I would go into lunch break, when I would go in to eat, and they would lock the door in between those set times, so you couldn't just go in when you were hungry. So I would start hoarding food. So I was, those like mini 2 packs of Arnott's biscuits. I had a drawer in my room that was solid full of them. Whenever anyone came to visit me, I was like, can you bring me some timeouts? Can you bring me biscuits? Can you bring me lollies? Because I was so worried that I was going to get hungry and not be able to eat when I needed to eat. But I wasn't going, hey, can you bring me a sandwich? Can you bring me sushi? Can you bring me a salad? I was like, give me all the sugary goodness.
But you can't hoard sushi in a drawer for 2 weeks.
Can't you?
Nah.
Doesn't fish get better?
So were you a closet eater prior? Like, is that?
Yes and no. I mean, I've been single prior to meeting Simon, so I've lived alone, so I haven't necessarily been a closet eater because there's only ever been me kind of thing. But yeah, I would definitely binge eat. I would take periods of time where I would, like I can have chocolate in the fridge for weeks and not touch it, and then once it's open, it's gone. Sometimes it can be a couple of hours. It's like once I've opened it, it's got to go.
So you're one of those seafood and eat it. You're a seafooder.
Yeah. And even now, that's still something that I really struggle with keeping in check and not going overboard.
So you've had the sleeve and you've gone to the bypass. What do you feel you've done differently with the bypass that you didn't do with the sleeve?
It's really hard because when I had the bypass, I imagined, so I haven't had the Roux-en-Y, I've had the Sadie's, which is basically where they keep your sleeve. They don't make the little pouch. And then they just cut about half of your intestine down. So
is that because you've had the sleeve first? Is that why they did it that way?
Not necessarily. I could have gone to the little pouch, my secret pouch. I could have gone to the pouch, but my surgeon talked a lot about if you've already had one surgery, the transition piece and so on. And to be honest, I'll admit I didn't really fully understand. He more or less pushed me towards this option. Then I went away and I got on Dr. Google, and Dr. Google told me loads of stuff. And I'm sure, because I know a few people that have had a revision and they've had the Roux-en-Y, and I seem to be the exception to the rule with the Sadie's. But yeah, like from what I read, it talked about long-term, because I'd regained, he was really conscious of me not regaining again, and he felt that this was the better option for me. I can't answer that.
That was going to be my question. Did he focus much on the mental health? Because I honestly feel like this time around, the biggest thing is your mental health. I think,
and your relationship with food.
As much as they say like food is 80% and 20% exercise, I honestly think it's like 60% mental health.
After I left the hospital, obviously I had a really stressful period. When I came out of the hospital, I'd lost my job while I was in there. We were getting
the hospital from your mental health or from the hospital after having your bypass?
On mental health. I'd kind of ballooned my weight up between then. Like I remember Australia Day, you guys came to our house. Mm-hmm. I remember having nothing to wear because I'd put so much weight on that nothing fit me. And it was that day that kind of made me go, actually, something needs to change here or I'm going to end up back where I was. So at that point, I was about 103 kilos. So I'd gone from 88 going in, 93, 96 coming out of the hospital, and then 103 by January.
So the chat that we had that day, because I remember sitting down and talking with you and the other people that were all there, and you were pretty much saying, "Oh, I'm having revision surgery." And to me, I was like, "Wow, that's the first time I've heard of this." Was that also the first time that you were sort of saying it out loud?
Yeah. So I'd been thinking about it, just because I guess I'd felt my weight going up, and being someone that had been overweight. You know how kind of helpless that makes you feel, like, well, I've had the sleeve and I lost all this weight and I've put it back on. How the hell am I going to get that weight back off? And even things like when we'd gone to Thrive in the October, I'd ummed and ahed about whether I got to go because I'd put weight back on and what would people think. And like even that had started to affect, and that brought back so many memories from not wanting to go back to England in case I saw people I knew and they'd be like, oh, she's got fat.
It breaks my heart to think that you thought those things, that people were...
Oh, you do though. You do. Like you are your own biggest critic. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's like, no matter what it is, if it's not the weight, it's the loose skin. If it's not loose skin, it's, for me, the scar on my nose. If it's not the scar on my nose, it's the pterygiums on my eyes. You're your biggest critic. You look at yourself every day, so you notice any changes more than anyone else is going to know. So you got to criticize yourself more than anyone else. So for me, like the big statistic that I remember hearing, and this is a prime example of it, is the biggest cause of death after bariatric surgery is suicide.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's not, and this is what I mean, and I talked to someone about this because it was literally, you think about it. If you got to a point where you regained, and for me, this was my last option. Like I had no other outs after this. Imagine regaining and the mental strain that would put on you to be like, how am I going to dig myself out of this hole? Like I've taken the biggest shovel and I couldn't get out, you know what I mean? Like the ladder's broken, I have nothing to do, and how much that would impact you, especially like the situations like Lauren's talking about where she was going out in public and she was feeling like people were judging her, and, those added pressures that would be adding on.
That's what I was going to say before. Like, you had the sleeve and you've lost all the weight, and then over time you've slowly regained, which not many people would have actually have noticed. Obviously you did. But like, I know for me, and Shannon said it before too, like surgery was the last option. If you didn't succeed in surgery, what else was there? And clearly you must have been feeling similar for you to, like, you've 100% talked about your mental health issues. So like, I can completely understand when you say that, like, you had to do something else because you'd lost the weight and then you were regaining.
And I knew that previous attempts to diet and to lose weight hadn't worked for me. And I was so frightened of going back to that and being that failure and feeling that, well, what's the point, because you're not going to lose the weight, you're never going to get to goal, you're never going to achieve what you need to achieve. So for me, it was like, I didn't want to go back to that place where I hated myself. And I'd done so much work over that sort of 3 or 4 months since I'd come out of hospital. I'd got a new job. I'd come off certain medication that had definitely contributed to weight gain as well. And I'd started to put really healthy routines in place. And then, I lost weight. So by the time I had my bypass, I'd lost 10 kilos by myself. And I'd done that through, going back to the gym, changing what I'd eaten and all. But my biggest fear was that it was going to still stop. Like, I was still 93 kilos. Oh, no, sorry, I'll lie. 96, 98. I don't know what it was. But whatever I still felt, well, I knew I was overweight for my body frame, for my shape, for how I felt. That was still not where I wanted to end. But I also couldn't imagine continuing on trying to be that strict, like that, living that strict, reserved, no, you can't have that because, blah, 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 all that stuff you tell yourself because you're never going to lose the weight. I didn't want to go back to that mind frame where everything in my life became around losing weight.
So do you feel after having the bypass, you've approached things differently to what you did when you had the sleeve?
Yeah. For one thing, you kind of come out knowing that you've got this horrific pre-op. So, pre-op wasn't that bad. Yeah, I did my shakes and all the rest of it. I came out and I knew I would have 6 weeks that were really tough going through those different, stages of food. But you're kind of more prepared for what it's going to be like as you progress through. I also did they were for me because I didn't have any real change in restriction because I still kept my sleeve, whereas people that have had the Roux-en-Y have a pouch to then manage eating limits.
Plus, it's not a shock to the system. You're not going from like 2 plates of food to quarter. You're going from like half to a quarter. You know what I mean? So, I guess that leads me into like social media. Has it been would it be a good or bad tool for you to get to here? Because like it's a great tool for some people, it's not for others. How do you feel about it?
I feel that Instagram is like a double-edged sword, and it's about finding a really strong balance. The first time I went in, I was very naive, and I felt like everybody whose page I liked would like me and that we'd be friends. And then I kind of realized, well, just because you're fat and I'm fat doesn't mean we're going to be friends. Like we have things in common and we have similar struggles, but we're still different people. Like that one mutual factor does not instantly mean everyone's going to be friends, and that's fine. So for me, I went through a stage where I was like, I don't want anything to do with Instagram. And that was very much on me and my mental health, because I would look at people that had had surgery after me or had started at a higher weight than me that were slimmer, but that I could see were posting videos saying, oh, I've eaten KFC today, in my opinion, were balanced as what I was trying to do, but yet they were at full weight, and I was becoming like this nasty, resentful bitch that couldn't stand to look at Instagram because everyone I saw, I was like, ugh, they were slaved after me, or, you know, I'm putting weight on. So in that sense, I took a huge step back, and that was probably around sort of that Christmas period. Like, I mean, you guys know I bought a ticket to the Queensland meetup, didn't attend because I was like, nah, I'm not in the right headspace. I was bypassed, and I went back into social media, and now I use it just for me. I have key people that I engage with when I'm on my content. If I come across someone that's new in their journey, I'll fire them a message and be like, make sure you do a poo before you have your surgery because you're going to be cramped up. Like, that's like my number one thing. I'm always talking about poo, which is why I liked Deb's story so much last week. Because I was like, yeah, that resonates with me. Poo talk.
Yeah, more poo talk. No, and I think you're exactly right. Like, I think if you're using it, you got to use it for, what was it? It was connections. You got to use it for motivation, inspiration, and networking. Because like for me, it's like if you're using it to compare yourself to others, it's only going to end up in disaster.
But like
you're setting yourself up to fail.
You said before though that like you've connected with quite a few people, but there was at one point in time where you actually, and you openly, like, you're very raw in your journey, and anybody who follows you realizes that, like, legit, when you checked yourself into the mental hospital, you're like, hey guys, in hospital for 4 weeks, sup, like, you know, you're so raw, you're so honest about everything, like, you're like, see ya on the other side sort of thing. But like, I guess you were very raw in the fact that you were, at the time when you were sort of struggling, you also said that, and you hated to admit it, but you were saying that the people who were succeeding and who were your friends, you were getting annoyed and jealous and angry at them because they were doing, and I use inverted commas here, like they were doing better than you. But it wasn't the fact that anybody was doing better than you. It was just that you were comparing yourself to their highlight reel. And I think that's one thing that we need to try and say. Like, social media is great. You connect to people, you learn a lot of things, but it is everybody's highlight reel.
100%. 100%. Now, it's one of the big reasons, like, I stopped sharing my weight, like how much I lost.
Me too.
Purely because I know that's the big scale. You know, it's the same as like if I run a marathon, I look at someone else that ran a marathon, I'm like, they ran in this time. It's the same within the, you know, the social media world. It's like, oh, he's lost this much or she lost. And like, I get that because like I'm a competitive person, but it's not equivalent with scales because like I was a big boy, you know what I mean? So for anyone to look at my numbers would be like, well, you know, he's lost that much, you know what I mean? So it's not going to do a good mental job on people to be like, oh, well, I want to get to that because you physically can't.
But the thing with scales too, and I will never forget this from when I used to watch The Biggest Loser when I was younger, is that it was a tactic that people would drink epic amounts of water before they got on the scales on weigh-in week, and then the next week they wouldn't drink any water.
Fluctuates so much.
And they'd get on the scales and they'd lose 25 kilos, but it was because it was water weight. There's so many things.
Variables.
There's so many variables. Like, you just can't compare people.
Even after my bypass, people, so that I've lived in North Queensland now for like 10 weeks. People are messaging me going, oh, you've lost so much weight. You're so skinny. Which I don't feel that I am. I have lost, anyway, I'm going off that tangent. The point I'm trying to make is I haven't actually lost weight since I have left Brisbane. My measurements have all changed, but my weight stayed the same. But yet people are now messaging me going, oh, you look so thin, you look so skinny. And I think, well, if I was posting my weight every week, I would be getting down because I'd be looking at it going, okay, well, there's been no change. I'm failing my bypass. But the reality is my body's still changing, but not on the scale.
But you posted a photo, and I will be the first to admit that you posted a before and after photo, and it was like from you before you had your bypass to you like a week or so ago. And I was like, damn, girl, like look at those curves. Like your body shape has changed so drastically. I don't know if the number on the scale has changed, but your body shape and can I mention the smile on your damn face has changed?
Like her skin, like she just looks happier. It's an energy. It's an energy.
I have not seen you smile this much since your wedding day.
Yeah, I am so happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. If I was married to Tory, I'd probably smile as much as well. He's a sexy man.
Married to Simone. Can I ask you one question too, though? Like, you got married and you weren't necessarily in your best state, so to speak.
Oh, no. My wedding dress on the day, I had to wear like these massive Spanx knickers. And my bridesmaids were literally putting their hands down the back of my dress and tucking my fat into my knickers because it was like bulging through the back of my dress. And when I got my
tucking, she means they were tucking her fat into
talking it.
But like,
yeah, I got my wedding pictures. I hated them. I was like, oh my god, I'm so fat. Like, look at my butt, look at my back, look at my arms. I look at them now and I'm like, oh, best day of my life.
I was gonna say that because that breaks my heart because you told me that on your wedding day and I was like, shut up. Like, seriously, you were so happy. You were like, there was a few mishaps that happened at your wedding where they called you by the wrong name and we all giggled. Like, it was just the most perfect day and everybody else felt like it was just such a special and it was so you. Bloody Laurel. But like, was your wedding day at the time, you didn't think that it was everything that you could have hoped for, but now looking back on it, was it?
Yes. Yeah. Even like the morning getting ready, I was so calm, I was so relaxed, but yet literally 3 weeks earlier I'd been in a mental tube.
That blows my mind.
Well, it's one of those things, like, so it leads me to like, throughout your process, the more bad experiences you have, the more lessons you learn. I honestly feel that. With your process, I feel like you've learned a lot of lessons throughout this whole journey. What would you say is the most valuable lesson you've learned?
I think it is a case of making sure that you focus on what it is that you're actually aiming for. Sometimes I got lost in the Instagram world of what were people expecting from me. Now it's about what do I expect from myself? What is my goal? And for me, routine is everything. So, making sure I'm getting up, making sure I'm showering. And some of this is not weight related. Some of this is mental health related. I'm journaling every day, practicing mindfulness, being grateful. I'm exercising. And again, that's probably the area that I still need to work on the most and that I know I do. I've just signed up for a boot camp and I've got a Pilates and a yoga introduction at the weekend and things like that. So, but things like meal planning, there is no point in putting all this time and energy into a surgery if you're not going to line up your day-to-day actions to support that. You don't go, this isn't a diet, it's a lifestyle. And if you continue the same lifestyle that you had pre-surgery, you're going to end up exactly where you were post-surgery.
The reason why I just laughed is because my mother, my mum religiously listens to our podcasts. She's always, hi mum. Since I was young, mum's always said to me, it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. And that was the one, like, whenever she said it to me, I would cringe and I'd be like, Mum, you don't understand. But now,
chocolate's so good.
It's actually true. But it is a lifestyle. Yeah. It is. It's those little habits that you make every single day. It's, choosing not to eat pasta at dinner instead, or like going for the run, or like, you know what I mean? Like, it's ordering HelloFresh or whatever instead of going to the supermarket. I said that because I know that you're an avid HelloFresh.
But it's also like, my quote that I seem to be using a lot lately is, you can't expect change if you aren't willing to change. You know what I mean? Like, you can't expect that the sleeve or the bypass is going to give you the results that you require purely because you had it. It's not going to happen that way. It's not going to happen that way. Sooner or later, your habits come back. You didn't, as we said before, you didn't get to the weight you got to because of the habits, were good habits. So you need to implement habits into your lifestyle that are going to help you progress forward and keep you on the track that you want to be on.
But that's why I think I respect you so much, Lauren, because you had the surgery. You knew that you were overweight in the first place, so you had the surgery. And then you then realized you had the surgery, you lost the weight, but then you were kind of like, well, crap, there's something else that's happening here. I need to get more help. You checked yourself into a hospital. You then decided, you know what, I still need more help. You got the bypass. And now, like, because you've been so self-aware and you have been taking on board everything that you've been learning, you are now happy. You're shining now. Like,
I'm sure she's still working on it. I'm sure she's still going through the process, but I think the biggest thing and the most rewarding thing for Lauren is she is very self-aware. She is willing to check herself in. You know what I mean?
100%.
Like, a lot of people out there aren't willing to check themselves.
To do that.
It is, because it's willing to say you have an issue.
And to do it so close to your wedding too. I think that's what brings it home so hard. Like, you could have been like, you know what, I'm going to put it off. But you didn't. You did it when you needed to do it.
If I had put it off, I wouldn't have got married. It would have been a different type of gathering. That's where I was. And that's confronting for me to say. It was awful being at the hospital and having to say it in front of Simon. But that's the reality. I had a choice, and my choice was to continue on, which would not have been continuing on, or was to go, actually, I need help. And I did need help.
But kudos to you when I was for that,
you know, it's one of those things, like she's saying, like, she got to a point where it was like,
it was like, it was make or break, you know, and like, even the other weekend I came back down to Brisbane and my sister said to me, we were talking about, you know, people that need help and maybe can't accept it, and she said to me, you know, there's been a long period of time where you've needed help and everything everyone said to you, you've just pushed back. Whereas now, and like you said, the best thing that could have happened was for you to be admitted into that hospital, because now you have better coping mechanisms, you're more self-aware, you know, 100% it has saved my life. And it's also changed my life because now I know all my triggers. So I know the little things, like if I don't feed the dogs in the morning, something's wrong. It's not that I want my dogs to starve, it's that my mental health is declining, it's that I need to schedule a psych, it's that I need to take some time out to process how I feel about something. And I think I'll always be grateful. I wasn't grateful at the time, but I'll always be grateful looking back that that's the stuff that I came out knowing. I have those distress tolerance and the coping mechanisms now, so that when things do go wrong, and I still have bad days, like everybody has a bad day, but now I can dust myself off and keep going, because it's a bad day, it's not a bad life.
In saying that, you just said, like, you're the kind of person that you put a lot of people before yourself, and for once you actually put yourself first. Continuing on that theme, putting yourself first, what is next for Lauren?
So my next goal is to hopefully start a family. Little baby Simons running around with their long eyelashes and like
I'm
cute
not gonna lie, like, I feel like you come on Bari Banter, and Will was on a few weeks ago, and he's announced that he's going to be a dad. I know. So maybe we are like the fertility expert, you know. It's like we're like a witchcraft.
Come on, Bari Banter, and 2 weeks later you fall pregnant.
Yeah.
That's definitely not going to happen because my health insurance doesn't kick in for pregnancy until August. So,
and also your husband works away. So.
If I fell pregnant in the next 2 weeks, he would know I've been up to something.
Yeah. You're like, what color was the milkman's hair? But honestly, Lauren, we do appreciate you coming on. I honestly appreciate you being so honest. Like, there was points in that where I was just like gobsmacked, because you were very honest, you were very real, and that's what we expect from you. And that's why we wanted to get you on, because you are someone who is honest, you are real, you are who you are. I had this ready for you, but you didn't swear at all.
I honestly thought I was going to swear.
I wanted to do the C bomb and the F bomb, but I was like, you know what?
You ready?
Do it.
3, 2, 1.
It didn't even work properly.
It's okay. But we appreciate it, Lauren. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we do appreciate you coming on, because I feel like there's going to be a lot of people that are going to benefit from you being honest, you being real, you being Lauren.
Talking about your regame, talking about your mental health. Honestly, I said it before, I respect you so much. And I'm so grateful for the fact that you 2 years ago were like, don't fall over the tram lines. And then you fell over the tram lines. So and that was what embedded our friendship. So thank you for being a clumsy beep. Thank you for being clumsy. But honestly, I miss you. I miss you now that you live up there. But I'm so thankful for our friendship, and I think a lot of people are going to be thankful for you being so open and honest. So
thank you.
Oh, that was so cute. I'm not crying. You're crying. Okay, well, that is it, guys. That's it for another week. Thank you so much, Lauren, for joining us.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Bari Banter.
So, yeah, that's it. Thank you for joining us, guys. If you would like to head over to our socials, we are on Instagram. You will also find us at www.baribanter.com, where you can feel free to fill out a form, give us any feedback, let us know who you would like to see on Bari Banter. Apart from that, hope you have a fantastic week. See you same time, same place next week.